Hey, what's up everyone? Producer, mixer, Matty Amendola here on Sonic Scoop for Soundtoys, who asked if I can create and share some presets for bass processing week. I'm also going to walk you through a mixing technique today to give you a little bit more control over your low end in a dense mix. And when we're done with the video, you can head over to soundtoys.com to download my presets, check out this week's flash sale, and everything else in celebration of bass processing week. It's been almost 2 years since I mixed a song using nothing but Soundtoys plugins on this channel, but today it's all about the bass, and specifically alt-rock, 90s, warm, punchy, modern low-end with sizzle and grit on top to cut through a plethora of guitars and loud cymbals. I'm thinking Foo Fighters, Stone Temple Pilots, really anything that Brendan O'Brien produced, a ton of 90s power pop. It was a time where rock and roll needed to compete with hip hop on radio, and the result of that is good old live bass sounding bigger than ever, three-dimensional, extended so you feel it in your belly, but yet on the brink of breakup with a ton of attitude to stand on its own. For me personally, when I'm chasing this sound that I love so much, I like splitting up the bass into two different tracks where I can process the low end separately than the neck and string definition. I'm going to show you how, and then we're going to get into all the processing using my Effect Rack presets. Here's the track we're working with today. It's a track of mine that I thought would be a fitting example. I'm playing everything with my good buddy Mike Abiuso on some extra guitars. Before we get into the processing, there is some preparation we need to do, and I'm going to walk you through that right now from scratch so you can see exactly how I got to where I am. Let's unhide the original track, which in my case is just a bass DI. And let's get rid of our other tracks. Here's what that bass DI sounds like on its own. Cool. And this could be anything on your end. It could be a bass amp, it could be a blend of a bass amp and DI. In my case, it's a DI. Next thing we're going to do is duplicate that track. And in the interest of keeping things organized here, let's say bass high, bass low. Name those regions. And then we're going to add a channel EQ to both of these. Now, things here are a little subjective. You don't necessarily have to follow the values that I find. I've seen a bunch of mixers choose different crossover points here. Just use your ear. I'm going to walk you through what I'm looking for when I do this, and then you just take that and roll with it as you see fit for your track. On our bass low track, we're going to use a high cut and get rid of everything except our fundamental low end. We're going to make sure that we're at 48 dB per octave, or maybe even a little higher if you're using another plugin, but any stock EQ will do. And we're going to use our ears and just get rid of everything but the sub and the foundational low end. Okay, now the trick here is to take that exact value, so we ended up at 137 hertz. We're going to do the same thing on the bass high, except now use a low cut. Get that nice and steep, and we're going to bring that to 137. Now, you might be asking, isn't this just completely messing up the phase? Yes and no. It is changing the phase. There is no question about that. Is it messing it up? Not necessarily. They will play together, and they're not completely out of phase by doing this using the steep curves that we're using. But it will mess with the sound a little bit and tonality, but that's okay, because what we're looking to do here is really take two different sounding tracks and then combine them to make one. So in context now, you can just start blending. Do you want to hear more low end, or maybe it's fighting with your kick drum. Maybe you need to lower the low end a little bit, but you still want that definition to cut through. Once you get your blend here, then all we have to do is send these both out to their own auxiliary track or bus. In Logic, I'm going to use this summing stack right here, and we're going to say bass bus. And now what we have is one fader to control both of those and also manipulate further. Once we've got this all set up and a nice blend, we can start adding our effect rack presets, starting with the bass low. All I did was flip from line to mic to get a little bit more grit. And then I'm using kind of the dynamic duo that is the mid-range, broad bump and drive knob on the CQ, which is adding a bunch of gain, but there's no question that it just undoubtedly adds a punch and overall forwardness to the bass. Here we are where we started, and then with these two guys on. Next up on the bass high, we're doing a little bit more, but again, starting with the radiator. This time we're adding a little bit more gain, completely crushing the input and then bringing it down to compensate. After that, we've got the decapitator. We're kind of light on here. Even though I'm in punish mode, we're not using too much wet signal. There's a bunch of dry in here. And then when this becomes really special is when we add the micro shift. So remember, we have our track separated right now. The only thing that the micro shift is on this high bass, which is really just the definition, the strings, and the neck. This is going to make sure that we're not spreading our low end and just making a mess out of things. But sometimes the perception of bass being a little wider than mono is everything in a track, especially in a track like this where guitars are just like one's in one room and one's in the other room over here. So here's what this preset sounds like before and after. And now the real fun begins, because we can put on our bass low and we can really start playing with what this bass is going to end up sounding like. On the bass bus now, we're going to start doing some overall gluing and tone shaping. And to do that, we're starting with the radiator. Same kind of trick, blasting the input, bringing the output down to make up for it, but we are going with the cleaner line option here. I just love how low end blooms a bit with the radiator, and now that we have these two other tracks together, I think now on the bus we need to start gluing them together a little bit. After that, we've got the decapitator, and we're not using it too crazily right here at all. All I'm doing is driving this up just a little bit. This is, this is my way of kind of rounding out those two tracks to feel more like one. And this decapitator is also providing a ton of punch. Check this out. Additionally, on this bass bus preset, you'll see two other plugins, another decapitator, and after that, a phase mistress. Now, typically when I'm mixing in my template, I'll have all these effects kind of off on their own, sends and returns, and feel free to do that on your own as well, but I'm just trying to walk you through my mindset, and what I'm looking to do at each stage here, and also a little bit of planning ahead. One of my favorite things to do with bass is to keep the dynamics moving, all throughout the track, and going into this bridge is a perfect example. Let's check that out for a second. Right, so we've got this bridge section where the bass is moving around, and it's time to showcase that bass player a little bit. And that's where these extra decapitator and phase mistress come in. By default, on my preset, those are going to be off, but they're really just kind of making us ready to use them down the line. And that's what I'm doing here. If we open up our automation lane on our bass bus track, we have that new decapitator, which is doing a lot more work than the first one. As you can see, we are in punish mode. We're on the EMI channel emulation here. We're driving it a good amount. Here's what it sounds like on its own. And then, as you were just able to see in real time, I have automation kicking on and off the phase mistress as well. So yeah, Soundtoys.com, you can download these presets as well as some other presets from people this week for bass processing week. There's also a flash sale going on, and anything else that you might need, all things bass processing week, you will find at Soundtoys.com. Let me run through the track to leave you off. It's a fun one. Hope you enjoyed this, and see you next time.